The words came out between bites of filet mignon. If you choose ovens over a real career, you're on your own. My mother's voice sliced through the birthday applause at Giovanni's Steakhouse, where 50 relatives had gathered to celebrate my 21st. I stood there clutching my culinary school acceptance letter, the butter stain on the corner suddenly feeling like a brand. My father didn't even look up. He just folded the tuition check in half, the one he'd promised me since I was 16, and slid it back into his jacket pocket like it had never existed. "Cancel the cake," he told the server. The table went silent. Forks stopped midair. My aunt whispered something about not making a scene, but the damage was already done. My mother continued, louder now, making sure everyone heard. "We raised you to be respectable, not some glorified cook flipping pancakes." The words landed like a sentence. No money, no car, the room at home locked by morning. Effective immediately. I left with a styrofoam to-go box and a trash bag of clothes someone stuffed in my hands, numb and shaking, while relatives pretended to study their dessert menus. My name is Kira Dalton, and that was the night my family turned my dream into a punishment. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel for more interesting revenge stories. I was 21 years old, standing in a parking lot in the rain, watching my parents drive away in the car I'd helped pay insurance on. The acceptance letter from Orlando Culinary Institute was still in my hand, getting soggy. 3 years of saving birthday money, working weekends at the mall, maintaining a perfect GPA, all for this moment. And they destroyed it in front of everyone who mattered. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Don't come crawling back when this fails." I wanted to throw the phone into the street. Instead, I screenshot the message and saved it. I didn't know why yet, just that something told me to keep receipts. My friend Marcus picked me up an hour later. I sat in his passenger seat, soaked through, holding that trash bag like it contained my entire life. "Because it did. You can crash at mine for a few days," he said. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. I slept on Marcus's couch for 5 nights. On the 6th morning, I woke up to find my debit card declined at the gas station. My parents had frozen the joint account we'd opened when I was 16, the one with my savings from 3 years of part-time work. $7,000 gone. When I called the bank, they said a parent could freeze any account with a minor's name, even if that minor was now legally an adult. The money was still there, just locked behind my mother's signature. "You'll need both account holders to release the funds," the banker said. I hung up. Calling home wasn't an option. Marcus let me stay another week, but I could see the strain. His apartment was tiny, his roommate already annoyed. I needed to figure this out fast. That's when I remembered Rosa. She owned a small cafe near the college, the kind of place that sold day-old muffins and let students study for hours over one coffee. I'd worked there summers during high school. Maybe she needed help. Rosa's cafe was called the Flower Barrel, and it was barely surviving. The paint was peeling, the espresso machine wheezed like it had asthma, and the pastry case held exactly 4 items, all store-bought. But when I walked in that morning, desperate and honest, Rosa looked at me like she understood everything without me saying a word. "I can't pay much," she said, wiping down the counter. "But there's a storage room in back with a cot. It's yours if you can help me bake from scratch. These frozen croissants are killing my reputation." I almost cried from relief. The room was tiny, barely bigger than a closet, and it smelled like old coffee grounds. But it had a door that locked and a window that let in morning light. That night, I moved my trash bag in and lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my mother. "Find a real job yet?" I deleted it without responding. Then I set my alarm for 4:30 in the morning. I burned my first batch of muffins. The smoke alarm screamed, and Rosa came running with a dish towel, waving it under the sensor while I stood there mortified. "Oven runs hot," she said, not angry, just matter of fact. "You'll learn." I spent the next 3 months learning everything. How to adjust for altitude, how to tell when dough was properly proofed just by touch, how to make a ganache shine. Rosa taught me ratios instead of recipes, theory instead of just steps. "If you understand why something works, you can fix it when it doesn't," she'd say. I worked 7 days a week. Mornings at the cafe, afternoons washing dishes at a catering company downtown, late nights taking custom cake orders through a Craigslist ad I'd posted. I slept 4 hours if I was lucky. My hands were constantly covered in small burns and cuts. But slowly, things started changing. The flour barrel's pastry case began filling with items I'd made from scratch. Customers noticed. Sales crept up. That's when the freelance cake orders started getting serious. A woman named Brenda had hired me to make cupcakes for her daughter's baby shower, and she posted photos on every social media platform she had. My phone exploded with messages. Birthday cakes, anniversary cakes, a wedding cake for 200 guests that terrified me, but I said yes anyway. I bought ingredients on credit cards, worked through the nights, delivered everything in Rosa's failing van. The wedding cake was 3 tiers of champagne sponge with raspberry filling and Swiss meringue buttercream. When the bride cried happy tears, I knew I was onto something. But I was also exhausted. I'd lost 15 pounds I didn't have to lose. My back hurt from sleeping on that cot. And every time I saw a family at the cafe, laughing over breakfast, something inside me ached. Then one Saturday morning, a man in an expensive suit bought out my entire tray of butter croissants. All 12 of them. He left a business card on the counter. Orlando Food Network, it read. Intern program director. The internship was unpaid, which meant I kept all my other jobs while adding a 4th. The catering company was called Prestige Events, and they handled weddings for people with money. Lots of it. My role was simple. Arrive early, prep ingredients, plate desserts designed by the head pastry chef, clean everything, leave. I wasn't allowed to create anything. Just execute someone else's vision and scrub pans until my fingers pruned. But I watched everything. How they used acetate sheets for chocolate work. How they torched meringue at the last possible second for maximum drama. How they talked to clients, confident and professional. I absorbed it all like a sponge. Then came the November Gala. Prestige Events was catering a charity dinner for 500 people. I was in the back, arranging dessert plates, when I heard familiar voices near the buffet. My parents. They were guests at this event, dressed in formal wear, laughing with the same people who'd watched them disown me 6 months ago. I tried to stay hidden in the kitchen, but the head chef sent me out with a tray of champagne truffles for the dessert table. My mother saw me immediately. Her face registered shock, then something worse. Disgust. She intercepted me by the buffet, her voice loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Still playing chef, Kira? She said it like I was a child with a pretend kitchen set. People turned to look. Some smiled politely, waiting for my reaction. My father stood behind her, silent as always, his expression unreadable. I'm working, I said quietly, keeping the tray steady. I can see that, my mother replied, fingering the edge of my server's apron. Must be so fulfilling, serving people who actually made something of themselves. Laughter rippled through the small crowd. I felt my face burn, but I didn't move, didn't defend myself. Just set the tray down carefully and walked back to the kitchen with my spine straight. Later, after the event ended, I was cleaning the prep station when I overheard my mother talking to someone near the loading dock. She'll quit soon, my mother was saying. She always gives up when things get hard. Her companion murmured agreement. I stood there in the darkened kitchen, hands in soapy water, and felt something inside me shift. Not anger anymore. Something colder. More focused. I finished cleaning, drove Rosa's van back to the cafe, and went straight to the storage room. I pulled out every recipe notebook I'd been keeping, every scrap of paper with ingredient ratios and technique notes. Then I started working. That night, I created something new. Butter caramel squares with flaked sea salt, made with brown butter instead of regular, giving them a nutty depth I'd never tasted anywhere else. I baked batch after batch until dawn, adjusting the ratios, testing different temperatures, getting it perfect. When Rosa arrived at 5 in the morning, I had a full tray waiting. She bit into one, closed her eyes, and said, "Holy hell, Kira." By noon, they were sold out. By evening, people were asking when we'd have them again. A chef from Prestige Events came by the cafe the next week. Not the head pastry chef, but the sous chef, a quiet guy named Terrence who'd always been kind to me. He tried one of my butter caramel squares and immediately asked who made them. I did, I said. He studied me for a moment. The girl who scrubs pans? I nodded. You got talent, he said. There's a citywide pastry competition next month. You should enter. The Orlando Pastry Invitational was a big deal. Chefs twice my age competed for a $10,000 grant and serious industry recognition. The entry fee alone was $200 I didn't have. But Rosa loaned it to me without hesitation, and I spent the next 4 weeks preparing. I practiced my signature dish until I could make it blindfolded. I studied plating techniques on YouTube. I borrowed professional equipment from prestige events when they weren't using it. On competition day, I arrived at the convention center with my ingredients in a cooler and my heart in my throat. My oven malfunctioned halfway through the timed round. The temperature spiked, then died completely. Other competitors kept working, focused on their own stations. I stood there for 5 seconds, panic rising, before my brain kicked in. I had portable burners. They weren't ideal, but they'd work for the caramel. I adjusted everything, working twice as fast, using a kitchen torch to finish what the oven should have done. The judges walked by, watching me improvise. One of them nodded slightly. When time ran out, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely plate. But the squares looked perfect. Golden, glossy, the salt crystals catching the light just right. 3 hours later, they announced the winners. 3rd place. 2nd place, Kira Dalton. The prize was $5,000 and a feature in Orlando Food Magazine. I stood on that stage, holding an oversized check, and felt like I could finally breathe. Then my phone buzzed. A text from my father. "Proud of you. We need to talk." I met them at a cafe 2 days later, the nice kind downtown where everything cost twice what it should. Part of me hoped this was real, that they'd seen the competition coverage and realized they'd been wrong. My mother hugged me when I arrived, something she hadn't done in 7 months. My father ordered me coffee without asking what I wanted. "We saw your win," my mother said, smiling. "It's wonderful, sweetheart." The words sounded foreign in her mouth. We made small talk for 10 minutes before my father got to the point. "Your brother wants to start a business. Import-export. He needs a co-signer for the startup loan." I set my coffee down. "Why are you telling me this?" My mother reached across the table. "Because family helps family, Kira. And now that you have some money and credibility." She trailed off, but the implication was clear. They wanted me to risk my competition winnings and my credit score on my brother's venture. "No," I said. My father's expression hardened. "We supported you for 21 years. You cut me off," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "You froze my bank account. You called my dream embarrassing in front of 50 people. You don't get to call that support." My mother's smile disappeared. "Don't be selfish, Kira. After everything we've given you." "Given me?" I almost laughed. "I haven't taken a cent from you since the night you threw me out." My brother, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. There was something in his tone that made my skin crawl. Not anger. Something calculated. They left without saying goodbye, and I sat there finishing my overpriced coffee, wondering what I just triggered. 2 weeks later, I found out. A catering client canceled, citing concerns about my professionalism. Then another. A supplier I'd been working with for months suddenly refused to extend credit. When I called to ask why, the owner was apologetic but firm. "Someone's been spreading rumors," he said, "about how you do business." I knew immediately who that someone was. My brother had been busy. Through mutual friends, I learned he'd been telling people my success was built on connections and sugar daddies. That I'd slept my way into the competition. That my recipes were stolen from real chefs. It was all lies, easily disproved, but the damage was done. People were cautious now, hesitant. 3 more clients backed out. My carefully built reputation was crumbling, and I couldn't afford a lawyer to fight defamation. Rosa's cafe started struggling worse than before. The espresso machine finally died, and she didn't have money to replace it. I felt like I was drowning again, pulled under by the same people who'd thrown me overboard the first time. Then Rosa handed me an envelope one morning, her expression serious. "This came yesterday," she said. Inside was a letter from someone named Diane Pritchard. She'd been following my journey through social media and wanted to meet. She was an investor, the letter said. Specifically, she invested in female-owned food businesses. Diane Pritchard was 73 years old, barely 5 feet tall, and had more presence than anyone I'd ever met. We met at her home, a renovated bungalow filled with vintage baking equipment and French copper pots. She'd been a pastry chef in Paris in the 70s, came back to Florida, and made a fortune in commercial real estate. "I've been watching your videos," she said, pouring tea. "The lamination tutorial series. You have a gift for teaching." I'd been posting short baking videos on social media for months, mostly late at night when I couldn't sleep. They were simple. No fancy editing. Just me explaining techniques in Rosa's kitchen. Somehow, they'd started getting views. Thousands of them. "What do you want to do?" Diane asked. "Long term." I'd been afraid to want anything beyond survival. But sitting in her kitchen, surrounded by the tools of someone who'd actually made it, I let myself dream out loud. "I want to make baking accessible," I said. "Real techniques, quality ingredients, but affordable. Most people can't make croissants because they don't have time. But what if they could buy frozen dough that's actually good?" Diane wrote me a check for $50,000 that afternoon. Seed money for Dalton Butter Company. The concept was simple. Frozen croissant dough made with real butter, organic flour, no preservatives. Something a home baker could proof overnight and bake fresh in the morning. We spent 6 months developing the product. I tested ratios in Rosa's kitchen, adjusted recipes, perfected the freezing process. Diane connected me with a small commercial kitchen space and a food scientist who helped with shelf stability. By month 7, we had a product. By month 8, we had packaging. By month 9, I was standing in the parking lot of a regional grocery chain, talking my way into a meeting with their buyer. He was skeptical until I offered a live demonstration. I proofed the dough in their break room microwave, baked it in their staff kitchen, and handed him a warm croissant that flaked perfectly when he bit into it. He placed an order for 50 stores. Then a local morning show called. The morning show segment changed everything. I demonstrated the croissant process live, talked about making French pastry accessible, told a shortened version of my story. The host loved it. Viewers loved it more. By noon, the grocery chain called. They wanted to expand to 200 stores. By evening, my social media had exploded. 100,000 new followers. Messages from people who'd been cut off by their families, who'd chosen dreams over approval, who saw themselves in my story. I couldn't keep up with the orders. I hired Rosa first, paying her 3 times what the cafe had made. Then 2 culinary students who needed work. Then a part-time delivery driver. Dalton Butter Company went from my side project to an actual business with employees and logistics and problems I'd never imagined. But good problems. The kind that meant growth. That's when my parents reappeared. They started commenting on my posts. Supportive messages, heart emojis, shares with captions like, "So proud of our daughter." They showed up at my first major launch party at a local restaurant, flowers in hand, hugging me for the cameras. I wanted to scream at them, to make a scene, to publicly call out their sudden change of heart. But I didn't. I smiled, I thanked them for coming. I kept my boundaries internal and my face neutral. After the party, my mother pulled me aside. "We should talk," she said, "about merging our efforts. Dalton and Family Bakery has a nice ring to it." I kept my expression pleasant. "What do you mean?" She explained their vision over the next 3 days. They put together a business proposal, a whole binder labeled Dalton Family Bakery Expansion Plan. They wanted 40% equity in my company in exchange for their guidance and family name. My father promised connections through his business network. My brother offered to handle marketing. It was presented as reconciliation, a way to heal the family while building something together. But every instinct I developed over 2 years of surviving screamed that this was something else. "Let me review the proposal," I said. "I'll get back to you." That night, I called Diane. "Something's wrong," I told her. My Aunt Sylvia called me the next morning, her voice shaking. "We need to meet. Privately." She'd been quiet at that birthday dinner 2 years ago, one of the relatives who'd averted her eyes when my parents threw me out. But she'd also been the one to stuff that trash bag with clothes. We met at a park. She handed me a folder. "Your grandmother left you money," she said. "For college. $50,000 in a custodial account. Your parents were supposed to give it to you when you turned 18. I stared at the bank statements and sighed. Deposits made monthly by my grandmother before she passed away when I was 16. Then 3 years ago, right after her death, a series of withdrawals. All of it gone within 6 months. "Where did it go?" I asked. Sylvia pointed to the wire transfer codes. Your father's business. He claimed it was an investment that would triple the money before you needed it for school. Except the business was just a shell company your cousin ran. It never existed. The timeline made sense now. My parents had stolen my college fund and needed to cover it up. The easiest way was to make sure I never went to college at all. If I didn't pursue culinary school, if I got a real job instead, I'd never ask about the money. The birthday cutoff wasn't about morals or tough love. It was about hiding theft. I sat in my car after meeting Sylvia, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process this. Then I called my lawyer, the one Diane had connected me with when we formalized the business. I need you to pull records, I said. Educational custodial account, wire transfers, and I need you to trace where the money actually went. She called back 3 days later. You'll want to see this in person. The paper trail was clear. My father had created an LLC with my cousin. Money from my grandmother's account had been transferred there, then immediately moved to my father's personal accounts. Some of it paid off his credit cards. Some went to my brother's college tuition. The money that was supposed to launch my education had paid for my brother's degree while I slept on a couch and burned my hands making muffins at 4 a.m. The rage I felt was clean and cold. I didn't yell. Didn't break down. I just planned. I scheduled a community tasting event, invited the press, and announced it on social media as a celebration of Dalton Butter Company's success. My parents saw the announcement and immediately asked if they could attend. Of course, I said. It's a family event. I spent 2 weeks preparing. My lawyer prepared documents. My accountant verified every transaction. Diane helped me draft the press release. The night before the event, my mother called. We're so excited, she said. This is going to be wonderful for the family brand. The family brand. My company that I built while they pretended I didn't exist. See you tomorrow, I said and hung up. The event was at Rosa's newly renovated cafe, the one I bought for her with my first real profits. 200 people packed in. Reporters from 3 news stations. The grocery chain's regional manager. My parents arrived early, dressed like they were attending a wedding. They positioned themselves in the front row, smiling for every camera. I watched them from backstage, my stomach tight with nerves. Then it was time. I stepped up to the microphone and the room quieted. Thank you all for coming, I said. Today, I'm announcing the Lillian Dalton Scholarship Fund. My grandmother's name. Not my parents. I explained the scholarship. Full tuition for culinary students who've been cut off by their families for pursuing the arts. 5 students per year. Paid for by a portion of Dalton Butter Company's profits. The crowd applauded. My parents' smiles looked strained, but they clapped along. Then a reporter raised her hand. Kira, I understand the scholarship is personal. Can you talk about why? I'd prepared for this moment. Rehearsed it. My grandmother set aside money for my education, I said. Unfortunately, that money disappeared before I could use it. I nodded to my assistant, who began distributing copies of the bank documents to the press. These records show systematic withdrawals from my custodial account. The room went silent except for papers rustling. Reporters leaned forward, reading. A camera swung toward my parents. My father's face had gone pale. My mother's smile had frozen into something grotesque. Kira, my mother started to stand. These are certified bank records, I continued calmly. The signatures authorizing the transfers are on file. The wire transfers to a shell company are documented. The timeline matches. A reporter called out, Mr. and Mrs. Dalton, did you withdraw funds from your daughter's educational account? My father stood. This is a misunderstanding. A family matter. Family matters don't involve wire fraud, another reporter said. Or stolen custodial funds. My parents tried to leave, but the questions followed them. Camera crews chased them to the parking lot. I stayed on stage, answered questions honestly, provided documentation for everything I claimed. By midnight, the story was on every local news site. By morning, it had spread further. My father's business lost 3 major clients. The bank opened an investigation. My cousin's LLC was flagged by the state. My brother deleted all his social media accounts. My parents' lawyer contacted me within a week. They wanted to settle privately, repay the original $50,000 plus interest, avoid criminal charges, sign an NDA. I met with them one final time, in a sterile conference room downtown. My mother looked like she'd aged 5 years. My father couldn't meet my eyes. We made mistakes, my mother said, but we're still your parents. I looked at them across the table. These people who'd shaped my childhood, who'd taught me to read and driven me to school and celebrated my early birthdays with elaborate cakes, who'd also calculated that their financial mistakes mattered more than my future. You'll repay the full amount, I said. 50,000 plus compound interest. 3,200 in legal fees. You'll sign a statement admitting to the unauthorized transfers. And you'll stay away from my business and my life. My mother started to cry. My father finally looked at me. We're sorry, he said. Are you? I asked. Or are you sorry you got caught? Neither of them answered. I stood. My lawyer will send the paperwork. That was 8 months ago. The repayment plan is being honored. My parents paid the first installment last week. We don't speak. I blocked their numbers, deleted their emails, removed them from every social media platform. My brother sent one message. You destroyed this family. I didn't respond. Dalton Butter Company now distributes to 800 stores across 3 states. The scholarship fund awarded its first 5 recipients last month. I cried when I handed them their checks, remembering what it felt like to be 21 and desperate and sleeping in a storage room. Rosa retired and moved to the coast with enough money to live comfortably. She sends me postcards. The business keeps growing, not because I'm trying to prove anything anymore, but because I genuinely love this work. The early mornings, the problem solving, the way a perfect croissant shatters when you bite it. My phone buzzed yesterday. Unknown number. This is your mother. I just want to talk. I deleted it. Then I went back to work, rolling out dough for tomorrow's production run. They wanted control. I wanted peace. Turns out, the quietest revenge is just living well.